I'm Noreen Purcell Dillman, the creator of the Healthy Peaceful podcast. About me, I describe myself as a former attorney, YouTuber, natural food chef, wellness guru. No, that's not a typo. It actually means precious one. If you haven't been following me, you may be wondering what this podcast of 4 years is all about. It's a place where I interview individuals on topics pertaining to the meaning of health and well-being, personal and collective consciousness, and maximizing full human potential. This episode is a part of a series between me and Chef Rich LaMarita. During this series, we delve into the 8 principles of food in the ancient system of health and well-being called Ayurveda. What I really like about this series and what I feel Chef Rich literally brings to the table, and I've studied many Ayurvedic cookbooks and other written materials about the Ayurvedic approach to food. I've discovered few, however, written by a professional chef who is also completely in tune with what appeals to the American palate. So here, instead of presenting yet another litany of lists and do's and don'ts of what to eat if you want to try Ayurveda, Rich asks us to join him on a journey of the senses. I've discovered, and I'm sure you will too, that no one wants to embrace an Ayurvedic approach to food and health unless there is some sensory delight, meaning pleasure of the senses. So let's delve in with Chef Rich, acknowledging that initially we may feel confused, but with some practice and Ayurvedic approach to our daily food will become second nature. Naturally, we will begin to see our health transform. And once this magic starts to happen, we will want to fully embrace Ayurvedic principles. The first principle is Prakriti. We often hear this word referred to in Ayurveda to describe our own individual nature, essentially what our doshic makeup was at birth, our own mind-body type, and the North Star for the balancing principles that Ayurveda furnishes. We don't often hear it referred to when we speak about food, but food also has a Prakriti, an inherent nature. Specifically, Rich will bring us on a journey through the 6 tastes and how, according to Ayurveda, these tastes have a unique effect on our Prakriti, our own mind-body type. The second principle of food that Rich will introduce is Karana, or preparation, and how different methods of food preparation impact our physiology and mental outlook. The third principle is Samyoga, or food combining. Without becoming too rigid, we want to become aware of how Ayurveda views different combinations of food, and what are the definite faux pas and what we can regularly incorporate for maximum health and well-being. The fourth principle is Rashi, or amount. Ayurveda has a formula for the quantity that is considered too little, too much, and just right. The state of our appetite, or what is called Agni, will also be considered, as well as times of day. Caution here, we may append that universal American belief that a large breakfast is required to fuel your day. The fifth principle is Dashen, or the source of food, and where we consume the food. We are all familiar with what is now universally adopted by those who truly care about their health. Eat what grows locally and organic, if at all possible. Yet we all continue to enjoy our avocados. Rich will share the Ayurvedic view here. The sixth principle is Kala, or time, and will include daily eating habits, meaning what times a day are most appropriate and the quantity of the food for each meal. Kala, or time, also relates to each season and how our diets will change with the seasons. We will also address times of life. What we eat when we are 62 and the quantities we eat at 62 are dramatically different than what we eat when we're age 12. The seventh principle is called Upayoga Samstha, or rules for food intake. Here, Rich expounds on the culture of eating and our habits, essentially how we behave before, during, and after a meal. The eighth principle, or Upayukta, considers the person who is eating, essentially his or her mental state. In Ayurveda, these states are called Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. And also the strength of our digestion. Is it balanced or imbalanced? And how do we remedy imbalanced digestion? Now, a bit about Chef Rich. Currently, Chef Rich LaMarita calls New York City home. He was a chef instructor at the Natural Gourmet Institute in Manhattan for over 25 years. This is where Rich and I met, as I was a student there. NGI was formed by Anne Marie Colvin, a well-known proponent of the connection between food and health, also a proponent of natural foods and the author of many books pertaining to these topics, including her seminal work titled Food and Healing. While at NGI, Rich's specialties included the following: vegetarian cuisine, vegan, Indian, and Italian. Rich has also worked with numerous well-known chefs in New York City, including Floyd Cardoz, Dan Kluger, and Ben Pollinger. He has also worked as a private chef for many notable families and as a private instructor in Manhattan and the Hamptons since 1995. Rich has been a practitioner and teacher of Ayurveda for 35 years. He has studied with Vedic and Ayurvedic master Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, the founder of Transcendental Meditation, TL. Rich has led seminars on Ayurvedic diet, cooking, yoga, and meditation throughout the US, Europe, and Asia. Rich joined the Institute of Culinary Education in 2019, ICE, teaching plant-based culinary arts career classes and leading recreational classes in Ayurvedic, Asian, and vegan cuisines. He is also a graduate of Maharishi International University's master's degree program in Maharishi Ayurveda and Integrative Medicine, a program where he is currently teaching as a TA. Wow. After reading this, I hope you're as excited as I am. And I realize how special it is to have a guest like Rich LaMarita. I hope you will find this series as enjoyable as I have. Now let's dive in. Good morning. This morning we're continuing our series, and I have Chef Rich LaMarita with me today. Welcome, Rich.
Hi, Noreen. Thank you for inviting me as always.
Yeah. And this is our continuing series on the relationship of Ayurveda to food. So, Rich, we talked about, we were going to jump right into talking about food combining and why that's significant in Ayurveda, because a lot of people kind of poo-poo that, and it's hard for people to think about how the combinations of food may affect their overall health. So let's jump right into that topic, because that is a significant one in Ayurveda.
It is. And I'm gonna start with kind of the big picture, okay?
Sure.
If you don't mind, I'm just going to review the definition of a healthy individual in Ayurveda because it all ties in.
It's a good starting point.
It's a good starting point, and I'm gonna try to give you the quote of the healthy individual in Sanskrit, okay? And then we'll talk very briefly about it. In Sanskrit, it's Samadosha, Sama Agni, Samadhatu Malakriya, Prasana Madriya, Mana Svasta, Ityabi Yatate, which means one whose doshas are balanced, whose agnis are balanced, whose dhatus and malas are functioning normally, and whose indriyas, manas, and self, atma, are filled with bliss. Such a person is a healthy person. So one whose doshas are balanced. We know that the Ayurveda, that's the basic key thing about Ayurveda, is balance of doshas, vata, pitta, kapha. But right up there with that, it says whose agnis are balanced. Agnis are our digestive fires. For good health, you absolutely need strong, balanced, proper digestion. Whose dhatus means whose bodily tissues and malas are functioning normally. Malas are waste products. So whose bodily tissues and processes of elimination are functioning normally. Then your senses and your mind and yourself will be filled with bliss. Such a person is a healthy person. So Ayurveda puts tremendous value on our digestion. And it says Sama Agni. Sama Agni means balanced Agni, balanced digestive fires. It's good, strong, proper digestifiers. In our very first talk, we talked about, or if I remember, we talked about the idea of, am I on an Ayurvedic diet? And we listed some of those characteristics of some of those results.
Yeah, you were contemplating kind of the bigger question.
The bigger question on that, the bigger picture on that. Yeah. So the Vaidya's tell us that the Vaidyas who do many, many consultations, that it's actually very rare to find someone with Samadosha, with Sama Agni.
Yeah,
That it's rare that the people in today do not really have really good, strong, balanced Agnis. We do tend to have what they call functional Agnis, three types of functional Agnis based on the dosha, Vata, Pitta, Kapha. In other words, your digestion might be what's called Vishama, which means irregular, kind of irregular. Tikshna, which means based on Pitta, which means kind of a hot digestion. It's very strong. Or a Mand Agni, which means based on Kapha, which means a kind of a slower digestion. But they're called functional Agnis. I mean, in other words,
yeah,
if you understand your body type and you understand what type of digestion you have, you can do good with these. Okay, you can eat
you
properly.
can they're basically things that you can work with
Yes, exactly,
and
exactly.
improve upon.
Yeah, yeah. You always want to hopefully that work towards Sama Agni.
But
If
it's important to understand first what kind of digestion you have as an
right,
individual, whether it's you know, Manda Agni, the slow, whether it's Tikshna Agni, the Pitta, you know, the high metabolism, very
right,
hungry, that sort of thing, or
right,
whether it's Vishama, more irregular Vata.
right. For instance, I tend towards Tikshna, Tikshna Agni. Okay. Um, now if they get out of balance, because they're called functional Agnis, but if they get out of balance, then each of them can create what's called Agni Mandya. And Agni Mandya means weak digestion or digestive insufficiency. So something is wrong. And this can lead to what Ayurveda calls ajirna. And ajirna is indigestion, where now we get into more pathological states of digestion. And they also are three based on the dosha. So the Vata one would be called Vistabhya. The Pitta one would be called Vidagya. And the Kapha one is called Amajirna. And these are pathological states of digestion where digestion is not functioning properly. This could all lead to very serious things, very serious digestive issues and chronic digestive issues, which in Ayurveda are called grahani. So this is the really big picture. Grahani would be things like, irritable bowel syndrome and Crohn's and things like that.
But
And then,
can it also, a question I have there, Rich, is can it also lead to other chronic health conditions
oh
besides
yeah, yeah.
digestive?
Well, oh my gosh. Uh,
Mhm.
in Ayurveda, it is said that all illness, all disease stems from the digestive tract. All. So yes, so many, many, many imbalances and illnesses that we face in our world today, according to Ayurveda, can be sourced back to improper digestion. Improper digestion. It's again, it's of maximum value in Ayurveda.
Well,
It
you know,
really,
this reminds me of our discussion of Ayurveda and consciousness. You know how Maharishi said, you know, everything start at the root,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know, water the root and you know everything else will follow. Continue to water the root in our practice, our daily meditation practice.
Yep,
And with looking at our physiology and our physical health, starting with digestion is like watering the root. So we're connecting to consciousness.
exactly. Exactly. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So, when it comes to food combining, because this is one aspect of food, it's our next aspect that we talk about. Um, Ayurveda has a lot of information and a lot of tips and a lot of knowledge regarding this. Now, first of all, before we get into the actual, details of, actual food combining, like can you eat this particular food with this particular food? Um, you also have to think about, because part of this is number one, when we eat, the timing of when we eat is very important. Um, so it is recommended in Ayurveda that we eat mainly in the pitta time of day, which is from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. That our largest meal of the day should be around midday, because that is when our digestive fire is at its strongest. That's number one. Number two is we should always think about eating foods seasonally. Um, eating a proper diet for the winter, eating a proper diet for the summer and during the change of the seasons. So, in other words, what's called in Ayurveda called a deha, where you live is very important to that kind of determines your diet. If you're living way up north, you're going to have a different diet than if you're living in the tropics. So you have to keep in mind, where you're living, what foods are available. Now, this, of course, you have to take with a grain of salt. In other words, I live in the Northeast. We don't
No
grow
pun
lemon.
intended.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah, yeah. We live in, I live in the Northeast. We don't grow lemons and oranges here, but I eat lemons and oranges. Okay,
Right.
so you can't be so rigid that you're 100% in one area like that. Of course, I'm going to eat
But you
lemons.
don't want, but you don't want to make in the middle of January your entire diet consist of lemons and oranges.
Yeah, number one, right? Or light foods like, like salads
Right.
and summer squashes and things like that.
But
And
what about when they say salads are healthy?
no, so, occasionally good, okay? If I'm making my diet mainly every day, let's say salads for lunch during the winter, that's going to lead to a vata imbalance because that's going to be eating cold food in a cold climate, and that's not a good thing. I mean,
Yeah.
that is what we mean by food combining. Okay.
Okay.
I mean, I'm
Mhm.
naturally, during the winter, my body is naturally going to be in a colder environment. And here I am eating cold foods. Cold and cold is going to increase coldness in the body and therefore increase vata.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So that's very important. Of
So I
course,
think I think what you said so far is with food combining, it's not just specific foods not to combine with each other, which Ayurveda does address, but it's also thinking about our digestive fire, the individual's digestive fire, the season, the climate, place, that sort of thing.
that is very, very important. Yes, yes. But it quickly does get right onto the topic of the actual combination of foods and how we think about when we start putting food into our bodies. Chefs uh, mm, mm, chefs are great and chefs create incredible dishes, but sometimes chefs uh, put together, in the quest for like creating a very complex dish that has many, many different tastes. Without knowing it, they might be creating combinations that are not so good for a person. Okay, I'm not saying every chef does that or every chef falls into that trap, but it can be. It can be. Okay. So in other words, it just makes common sense that like if you try to cook, for instance, an apple and a steak together, okay, it's not going. It doesn't make sense, right?
Won't be
Because
pleasing to the
one
palate
is
either.
one is going to be completely overcooked and the other is not going to be cooked at all, okay? Or
Mm.
right? Or if you take when the apple is cooked and you take the dish out, the steak is not cooked at all. So things like that don't work. In Ayurveda, when you look at food specifically, you look at what's called the rasa, which is the taste of the food, the six tastes: sweet, sour, salty, pungent, bitter, astringent. But Ayurveda also looks at what's called the virya of the food, or the energy of the food. The energy of the food might be, well, the energy of the food means pretty much, is this a heating or a cooling food? Okay. And then Ayurveda also talks about what's called the vipak of a food. The vipak is a post-digestive effect, kind of an after effect that food might have.
Yeah,
Um,
I want to ask about that because I think that's the most challenging to understand the significance of the rasa virya rasa, the taste. Everyone can get wrap, we can. That's easy to understand.
right,
The virya, that foods have an effect on the body, which is either heating or cooling.
right.
Um, but the vipak, where you're going back to the six tastes again, but generally it's like three or four that ends up being the vipak.
Vipak means basically this. It means, does this food, is its basic effect going to be either uh, energizing or building of bodily tissue, like a
Okay.
sweet taste? Okay.
Mhm.
Is it going to be a digestive enhancer? Okay, in other words, something that will strengthen digestion, such as sour. Okay, or is it going to be has more of a purifying effect, kind of a
Right. Okay.
ability to release toxins, such as pungent effect? Okay. So
Yeah.
by
So in
vipak,
a
that's what is meant.
okay, so if it's building, it's going to be like, for instance, if the vipak is sweet, that's a building effect on the body,
Yeah,
meaning somebody might be depleted, they might need to increase energy. So the sweet vipak is going to have a building effect, like milk or like ghee, for instance.
exactly. Perfect.
Okay.
Yep.
And then now we're in the spring season, so we might want to look at some foods that actually have a detoxifying or a purifying effect of a vipak, essentially. So what would be an example?
Of vipak is spices. Of
Right. Well,
purifying? Purifying?
yeah, what would be an example of a purifying food, like leafy greens, for instance?
Leafy greens would be very good. Yep, yep. Leafy greens are
Okay.
better. Leafy
Because
greens, they have
the vipak is
anti-inflammatory properties.
okay.
Um, cumin, coriander, herbs, parsley, cilantro, herbs are very purifying in terms of helping the body to release toxins.
Yeah, I know cilantro in particular is very good for that. So
Yeah,
it could be something to continue to incorporate in the spring season.
yeah.
Um, that
So
that definitely clarifies for me.
yeah. So the thing is, when you start putting foods together, you could create in your body an overload of something, an overload of taste, an overload of cooling effect, an overload of a purifying effect, and therefore take away from that benefit. And maybe, instead of feeling good afterwards, eating, you'll start feeling you have indigestion, or the combination of foods will start curdling in the inside. Maybe they will start to ferment in the body or create gas. Ultimately, in what Ayurveda calls, it creates toxins or creates ama in the body when we don't do proper food combining. So there are.
When ama accumulates, and toxins start accumulating in the body,
Mhm.
this is when if they progress and people aren't, they we don't get them in the early stages, this is when more serious problems can result. And it's not
Exactly.
limited to digestion, because many times when we talk about Ayurveda, people think, well, I'm going to fix my digestion, but it's not affecting anything else. So just to reiterate that.
Would say that again?
Um, when the toxins accumulates, the ama
Yeah.
is going for a long period of time, and people aren't detecting these imbalances at the early stages,
Mm-hmm.
these digestive imbalances, and they have
Yeah.
ama, and
Yeah.
the toxins are accumulating. This is when the pathologies can start to occur. It becomes more serious and it becomes more challenging to treat.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, Ayurveda does recommend, does perceive or observe 6 stages of disease process, where the ama is gonna block or inhibit the functioning of a certain dosha. So yes, you have a kind of what's called an accumulation phase, an aggravation phase of the dosha, and then it goes into a dissemination phase. It starts moving into other areas of the body where it shouldn't go. So yeah, there's a kind of a progression of this imbalance that happens that ultimately turns into disease. Exactly. Exactly. That's what happens when this food is not digesting properly and we're forming ama in the body. So then from
Just
here
to
we,
re
yep.
and just to reiterate, the accumulation of ama over a long period of time, the conditions that can result are not limited to digestion. They can be many
Oh,
other things.
yeah, oh yes, exactly. That goes back to that point that
Okay.
Ayurveda sees almost every disease that we face has its roots in the digestive system. So yeah, that's the reason, right?
Okay.
So from here
Great.
we can go into some details in terms of
Mhm. Yeah,
what Ayurveda says
let's
is
go down.
incompatible, what's compatible, what are some of the
Sure.
golden combos, things like that. So in some incompatible things, in terms of foods that we tend to eat. I have some notes here. I just want to kind of look at that just to make sure. Okay. Um, so here are some kind of do's and don'ts in terms of incompatibility. You could spend hours on this, so I know we don't have time, but in terms of the reasons and the details of the whole thing. But here are some. Okay. So number one is fruit, believe it or not. Um, uh, fruit is fruit is recommended to be eaten pretty much alone. Okay. It's best when it's eaten alone because it digests quickly. So it doesn't really combine very well with other foods. The only thing where it's okay to combine it with is combining it with itself, such as, you know, but only similar fruits actually, like mixed berries, okay, for instance, or apples and pears, for instance, which are similar fruits. Um, eating
That's
eating like
interesting. I haven't heard that one about eating fruit alone. We hear about that even from a Western perspective, that in terms of the way it digests and the rapid rate of digestion with the fruit,
yeah.
um, that we hear about that. So that's not surprising. But I've never heard about combining similar fruits versus from an Ayurvedic perspective.
Yeah, I think I mean, it
Okay.
makes sense. Uh,
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. I can't refer back to the Ayurvedic text on that, but
Sure.
from what I've researched a bit and from my own
Okay.
experience, it seems
Yeah.
to make sense that, like blueberries and raspberries are fine together, or apples and pears, they're both fall
Sure.
fruits.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it seems more palatable. There's no doubt.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
So other things would be simple things like honey. Honey should never be heated, for instance. Okay, when you heat honey, it turns into a different product, and it's very very difficult to digest. Ayurveda actually calls it more like a poison at that point. Cucumbers, you don't want to have. I'm not cucumbers. I mean,
Actually, I wanted to go back to the honey.
yeah.
Because I've heard some of the Vajas that if you, is it essentially that with the honey, as long as you put it in warm, hot water that's not boiling and don't drink it right away, um, it's not going to be that toxic morbid substance that it's referred to in Ayurveda. It's generally okay.
Yeah, yeah. Only when it's cooked. When it's
Yeah.
cooked. In other words, you can
Okay.
put it in your warm tea. You
Yeah.
can put it in you can put it in your hot tea, but they recommend that they say that if you could put your finger in the tea and it's fine, you can put the honey in the tea.
Yeah.
If you could put your finger in the tea and it's boiling and that's no good, okay? But if you could put your
Yeah.
finger in the
Okay.
tea and it's fine, then that's okay. You can do that, but it's the
Hmm.
cooking, the actual cooking of the tea of the honey. Okay.
Okay.
Lemon doesn't go with dairy, for instance, which makes sense because that would curdle it in a way. Uh, that's the
This,
same in milk. And then you could do a whole thing on milk, but
right.
milk doesn't go with too many things at all. So milk should also be mainly alone and only warm, really, only warm. The one thing that milk does go together good with is spices. Spices are good,
Yeah.
and some grains,
Right.
and some grains. Okay.
Because they're both with the grains, they're both sweet.
Yeah, they're both sweet. Exactly.
Okay.
And particularly even the whole grains, because
Yeah.
milk is kind of heavy, whole grains are kind of heavy. So that's okay. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, like
so
that. What is that Indian dessert with the rice and the milk? Is that like a curd or something?
I mean the rice pudding.
Oh, like rice pudding, but isn't there an Indian version of that as well, that curd or something? Or
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I forgot the name of it. I know what you mean. Yeah, yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah. It
Yeah.
might come to me. Yeah, yeah. There's a couple of,
All right.
I
Well,
mean,
also, I think
many Indian desserts are based on milk, you know?
sure, sure, absolutely. The other thing I want to riff on is when you talked about the milk, and generally you're not going to want to. You talked about not eating milk, drinking milk cold, but warm milk is good, hot milk is good from
Hmm.
an Ayurvedic perspective, depending on your dosha, of course. Um, that brings me to the properties of the food are significantly changed from an Ayurvedic perspective, raw to cooked. You've got raw, you've got cold milk, raw milk, and then you've got cooked milk. It's very different. These are
Yeah,
different. These are really, from an Ayurvedic perspective, different foods,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and they will have a different rasa virya vipat.
Absolutely true. Because and I mean, I think that's why in the Ayurvedic texts they talk a lot about food, but there's not like this long list of foods with all their descriptions. Because let's say you take a tomato, for instance, a raw tomato. Okay, think of all the differences in that. First of all, if it's perfectly ripe, super ripe, a beautiful tomato that's homegrown, picked ripe, or grown locally, picked ripe, that's gonna have a lot of sweetness in it. Okay, it's gonna have a bit of acidity. Okay, there's a natural acidity in it, and then it's gonna have a bit of astringency also because most vegetables in Ayurveda are considered to have some astringency. Now, if it's unripe, that sweetness is going to be less. So it's going to have more of acidic nature, more sour, a little bit some more of the astringent nature has come out and less of the sweet nature has come out. That's why sometimes when you make tomato sauce, Italian tomato sauce, they put sugar in the sauce, right? Okay. Now, what happens if you roast a tomato? Now, if you roast a tomato, then you're going to start boosting the quality of sugar there. You bring out the sweetness. So you're going to be increasing the sweetness in it. But there's still going to be the other flavors, but they're just going to be less. So, yes, what you do with the food, which goes to what we talked about in the past, I think it's called kamana, kanya, The preparation of the food, what you do with the food, also is very important because that's going to be changing. That's going to change the qualities of the food, and
I
that's
think we
one of the
call that, I think we call that karana.
karana. Sorry, karana. Yeah,
No, that's
yeah.
okay. I wanted to talk about the tomato there. So does that mean we should roast our tomatoes for our tomato sauce
No, no, no. You don't have to.
or
But
buy
I
cans
think
of
it'd be
fire
better.
roasted
I think
tomatoes?
it would be better to get ripe tomatoes. You know.
Right, right,
Yeah,
exactly.
for sure.
Yeah.
And that brings back to goes to food combining. It's not a great idea to combine a lots of raw with cooked at the same time. Okay.
Say more about that.
Well, because they're going to be digesting at two different rates in the body.
What
Um,
about soup and salad?
uh, Probably from an Ayurvedic perspective, not the best thing in the world.
Maybe it's okay because it's liquid.
I mean, for soup, I would think maybe yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, it depends on how far apart you eat, with how things like that. But not the ideal thing, really, to be eating too much raw, too much cooked. If you're having a little bit of raw and some cooked, that's fine. You're having raw with a little bit of warm, that's fine. But again, it depends on the quantity, and it also depends on the person. Ayurveda is not a one size fits all, so it also depends on the strength of the Agni in the person, and whether they can handle that. You know, it
Yeah, no, good
even
point.
for a simple thing like it's not good to combine any food with lots of water. Okay, when you're sitting and eating, you shouldn't be downing glasses and glasses of water. That's going to dilute the digestive juices. And you certainly don't want to be doing cold water on top of that because cold puts out fire. So you're not doing yourself any favors when you're eating and you're drinking a lot, okay? Particularly cold. Happens a lot in restaurants, right? You go to a restaurant, they fill up the glass. It's the first thing they do. You finish the glass, the waiter's right around there filling up the
It's
glass again. And then you drink
and it's
that.
ice water.
It's always going to be ice water. Right.
They always
Exactly.
think it's strange when I ask for they always think it's strange when I ask for hot water, please.
Yeah. Or you
And they say,
put your
and they
hand.
always say, would you like some lemon? You know, they don't see anybody just getting plain hot water.
Exactly.
How
Exactly.
boring is
Exactly.
that?
Exactly. It's so the ideal thing to do is Ayurveda recommends that when you're eating, first of all, that you should not be drinking a lot a half hour before or a half hour after you may eat.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Okay.
good. That's
And
a good
then
point. But you can have a drink with your meal,
yes,
but
it could
just
be it could
you
be
don't want to be gulping it.
you don't want to be gulping, you want to be sipping room temperature or warm liquid.
Okay.
Room temperature
Yeah.
or a warm liquid. And it could be
Right.
tea, it could be water, you know.
Because what does Ayurveda say about um, when we eat, the stomach should be one third solid, one third liquid, and that could include soup, of course,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then one third empty,
Right, right,
two-thirds
exactly.
full.
Right, right.
Okay.
Now, we're also considering that our digestive juices are in there too, and that's liquid.
Yeah, yeah. Good
So
point.
that's some of the, kind of um, classic incompatible things. You don't want to eat too much. You don't want to eat dairy at night. Dairy is, um, dairy is hard to digest. But by dairy, they don't mean like warm milk. Warm milk at night is good. But
Like you don't want
like,
to eat
like
yogurt at night.
yogurt, cheeses,
I think
stuff like
it's
that.
interesting because as Americans, we're told yogurt's a healthy food, and certainly it is, but again, timing's an issue. It's a heavy food.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, so eating it at night is not a good idea, and you're setting yourself up for probably accumulation of ama,
exactly,
really are.
exactly.
Mucus, no doubt. The other thing is, we were talking about the milk and how it's transformed by heating it. And of course, yogurt's transformed by, doing a lassi. where you have, 2/3 water, 1/3 yogurt, and you've got spices in there. Now it's a completely different food. It's easy to digest. In fact, it enhances digestion.
Right. That, in fact, that's one of the great things to eat is Ayurveda calls it takra. They don't even call it yogurt at that point. They call it takra or buttermilk. It's called takra or buttermilk. It's not the buttermilk that we think of when we buy in the store, which is a
Mm-hmm.
which is
Heavy.
a byproduct of making butter. Okay,
Right.
which is good. I like it, and it's got good things in it. But the takra that they talk about in Ayurveda is basically a fresh yogurt, a fresh homemade yogurt, because a homemade yogurt is very different than a yogurt that you buy in a store. The yogurts that you buy in the store, which can be good, are generally thicker, heavier. They have emulsifiers, they have stabilizers in them, but the taste is also a little bit more sourish, more tangy. Fresh yogurt, when you make fresh yogurt, it's sweet and it's delicious. And then it's recommended that you actually take that yogurt and you mix it with either 3 parts or 4 parts water. So you thin it down and you can put some spices in it like cumin or a little bit of dried ginger or a little bit of like a black salt in it, something like that. And you have that after lunch. That's supposed to be one of the best things you can do for yourself in terms of your digestion.
What does the black salt do?
Black salt is a certain type of salt.
Right.
Uh, it's
It's
sulfuric.
used in Indian cuisine, but
Yeah.
I'm wondering, does it have a digestive
Well,
quality to it?
it's got sulfur in it, and sulfur is very astringent. It's
Okay.
sulfur is, it has some very good medicinal benefits, but it's also astringent. So it
So
helps
it's purifying
very purifying.
or
If you don't
helping
have
to
black
digest.
salt, if you don't have black salt, you can put some sea
Yeah,
salt or a little bit of
sure.
Himalayan salt or something like that. And you don't even
Okay.
have to put salt. You could
Right.
put a little bit of cumin, get a little bit of dried ginger or something like that in it.
Hmm.
That's called takra. That's called takra, and that's recommended to have after lunch. Okay, after lunch, not at night, not at night. But after lunch. But then you can have during the day if you want as a snack or something. Um, what was I going to say?
What about you were
Hold
talking
on.
about the
I was going to say
sure.
uh, the takara at night. Oh. So what I was going to say is
Mm.
that's very different than what we think of as lassi. When we think of when they say lassi, they generally mean the same thing, but now
Yeah.
the sweetened version.
Oh, okay. So you're essentially talking about lassi, but it's a little more savory.
It's savory, yes. The
All right.
takara, quote unquote, takara buttermilk is very good, healthy for you
It's got the
after lunch.
cumin, it's got the digestive spices. It's not going to taste sweet like a mango lassi.
Exactly. The mango lassi and all those other banana lassi or date lassi, those are sweet, and that's just a kind of an enjoyment thing, whenever you.
Right. Sure, sure, of course. Now you on your some of the on your outline for food combining, you have ghee on there. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah.
Did you have any? Okay.
First of all, it's one of the what's called the kind of golden combos is ghee and grain or ghee and rice. Ghee and rice is very, very nutritious. The ghee itself is very nutritious.
Okay,
Ghee,
I want to ask you a question about that. In Divya Alter in her book about Ayurvedic cooking, I think it's What to Eat for How You Feel,
yeah.
Ayurvedic cooking. Uh, she talks about when you're making your basmati rice, always put ghee in it. And then
Mhm.
it has a lightening effect to rice, which can be a heavy food. Typically, when we're thinking about dairy products, we're not thinking about lightness. So can you speak to that?
Well, ghee is light because it's not butter. It's made from butter, but it's not butter. First of all, a super quality ghee, a super good quality ghee, is made from cultured butter. So that's a whole different thing in itself. Tipped a little different than regular butter. And then from the butter, you're doing a process on it where you're eliminating the milk fats, the milk solids. So a lot of that fat that's in the butter is away. So you almost have turned the butter into almost like an oil, and it kind of looks like an oil. It's a little,
Yeah, yeah.
it's softer. It doesn't coagulate, things like that.
Have you
Um,
made ghee with cultured butter?
yeah, oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay. I find it separates. Do you?
No, the
All
butter
right.
or the
Maybe
ghee?
the ghee.
No, no, no. It doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't.
All right. Okay.
Now, what do you mean by separate? You mean the milk solids sink to the bottom? That's what you want.
It, like,
Doesn't.
how ghee let me, it almost stays at room temperature at a liquid quality is what I'm saying. Maybe separate was the wrong thing. When ghee, you cool it and then it sits at room temperature, it solidifies generally, and if you're keeping it in your cabinet, not in the fridge.
Yeah, yeah. It's still very soft, but yes, it's
It's
solidified.
very soft, but it's solid. In the summer, it can get more liquidy.
Yeah,
Um, I find with the cultured butter, it almost retains a bit of a more liquid quality.
I haven't
I could,
noticed.
okay, just curious about that.
Sorry. Yeah.
And I still don't understand why. I know Divya Alter recommends using cultured butter to make ghee, and I'm not quite sure why.
Well, cultured, the difference between cultured butter and regular butter is that it, it basically is slightly fermented.
Yeah, it still has the cultures, the
Yeah,
active
it's slightly
cultures.
so you have the
Okay.
kind of the bacteria in there.
Okay.
But ghee, there's many benefits in from the Ayurvedic text to ghee, such as tridoshik. Um, it's like the perfect fuel for pitta. It's just a perfect. It's one of the best foods for pitta in general, in terms of balancing and strengthening digestion. It's it's what's
So
called a
why is it a perfect food for pitta?
it
Just
just
curious.
I mean I don't know the science behind it,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's it just just is so beneficial for the stomach, for the digestive juices, for the acids in the stomach, for the mucus
Okay.
lining in the stomach, It's just like the
Mm.
perfect medium in there for the food and for digestion. It's also helps to carry the nutrients into the body better. It helps to kind of for those nutrients to be carried along.
Yeah, yeah, that's a reminder to me. In Ayurveda, they even when you have herbs, sometimes you're gonna have an anupan, and that anupan is the carrier. What's gonna
Yeah,
carry the herbs.
exactly.
And in some cases, ghee may be an anupan for herbs.
Hmm.
And so even with foods, it's gonna bring some of the foods deeply into the tissues.
Right,
And perhaps there's going to be greater nourishment as a result. Not perhaps, there will be greater nourishment as a result.
right. So ghee has a lot of these, really wonderful benefits. It's lubricating to the body as a whole,
Mm.
not only in digestion, but also for joints and bones. It's very good. It's it's it nourishes prana. It supposedly it nourishes ojas, prana, the dhatus. Um, so it's very beneficial overall. And yeah, supposedly with rice, it's just great. Other
Well,
com
I love the flavor of it,
Yeah,
cooked with
yeah,
basmati rice. I mean,
yeah. And then
it
fresh,
definitely.
I love to add fresh curry in there too.
You like to include fresh curry
fresh curry,
powder?
fresh curry leaves.
Curry leaves. Oh yeah, yeah, curry leaves, and maybe a couple of cardamom pods too.
That delicious, delicious. Yeah.
We're
So
getting
things,
carried away now.
yeah. So things that are compatible to each other.
Are these
Um,
the golden combinations?
I'm not going to get to the golden combinations, but
All right.
in general, things that are compatible are grains and veggies. Okay, particularly whole grains. I mean, we're chefs. We know that whole
Mhm.
grains, you should always favor whole grains. Legumes and grains also are a good combo. Okay.
Yep.
Now we said milk and spices, but milk
Yep.
also milk with some sweetened dried fruits are good,
Okay.
you
Okay.
know? So,
Yeah. So you
some,
can have you don't have milk with fresh fruits, but you can have them with dry fruit.
yes, yeah.
Maybe you do you cook the food, the fruit
You
in the
can,
milk?
yeah, you warm up the milk, you let the dates or the prunes or the dried apricots soak in there. Um, and you can
So
blend it up.
you could have oatmeal with
You can have
whole milk
oatmeal with some dried
cooked.
fruits, which I love. Yes.
And could you have whole milk in there as well?
Yeah.
Cooked?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I mean,
If
it's a
warm.
heavy breakfast. You have to be able to
Yeah.
handle it, but okay, cool.
Yeah, it's one of my I don't
Yeah,
have it every day, but
it's like raisins and oatmeal, right?
yeah,
Cooked raisins.
it's good.
You don't want to be, you know how many times you see Americans, they cook their oats and then they've got the different condiments to put on top of the oatmeal, like the sunflower seeds uncooked,
Right.
the
Right.
um the raisins uncooked.
Uncooked. We're so close.
Personally, I find raisins uncooked to be the most unsatisfying food.
We're
I'm
so
not
close.
going to say
All you got to do is cook them in there, They cook so well in there.
I know they're beautiful.
Yep.
That's one food I really find a big difference between organic and non-organic is raisins.
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just no comparison, when
yeah,
you cook
yeah,
them, they
yeah.
plump up in a way that so anyway, that's cool. So they can do their morning oats.
Yep. Yeah, I'm in favor of that. Now, animal
All right.
protein, if you eat animal protein, and for some, I think it's good. So
Yep.
animal protein goes good with actually lighter, non-starchy veggies or greens. Think about, you have meat and potatoes.
Yeah.
Some meat and something heavy, not ideal. But if the meat, any animal protein, and there's lighter animal protein that's easier to digest. But in general, animal protein is harder to digest. So you can at least have it with something with lighter veggies or greens. And
So give an example.
just some, like chicken, like a grilled or sautéed chicken breast or chicken cutlet with some sautéed kale or spinach or a mixture of greens, you know.
Okay.
Some roast zucchini or something like that, you
All
know.
right.
Yeah. Broccoli, roasted
But
broccoli.
generally you don't want to have
No, nothing
animal protein with
too heavy or
grains,
too starchy.
okay, or grains either.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
a lot of times, we're used to French fries with it or, heavy mashed
I
potatoes.
don't know if I would call French fry a grain, but no,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
no, it's
yeah,
not a
yeah.
grain. It's
But yeah,
obviously a
yeah, you don't
vegetable.
want it with something heavy, you know what I mean?
Okay, yeah, yeah,
So some of these
gotcha. Or
golden combinations,
even starchy veggies. If you can, you want to try to lean toward non-starchy veggies for
right,
animal protein. Okay.
right.
Yep.
Um, okay, some of these kind of golden combos. We said rice and ghee. Okay.
Oh, can we talk about veggies for a moment?
Yeah.
When you roast vegetables, sometimes people like to combine vegetables. Should it be
Mm-hmm.
all starchy or can you use a variety of vegetables?
Um,
Like sometimes you can put things in there like green beans and non-starchy veggies like cabbage and, you know, cauliflower, those would be non-starchy. And then you could put in potatoes. Is it good to combine them, or does it really, or does it, maybe it doesn't matter?
It's okay. I think it's good to kind of stick to similar families at least,
Okay. All right.
you know?
Yeah.
You don't want to mix too much.
Okay.
Uh, you know, like like maybe cabbage or broccoli with zucchini, for instance. Okay.
Right. Right.
Um,
Okay.
Stick with similar families. So, different, like different, you roast different winter squashes, or you can roast different summer squashes together. So do zucchini, yellow squash, patty pan mixed together, nice. Um, you can do roast cauliflower with broccoli, with some uh, with some cabbage, for instance. Cabbage is in the same family, could be nice. So I would keep it within similar families generally. Generally, you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
you
Can we
can
talk
you can
about,
throw in something, something that's similar. You could throw in if it's not in the same family, just don't overdo it.
yeah. Um, you know how roasted vegetables sometimes will, at least I find, maybe it's my oven, but they can get pretty dried out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Uh, I tend to cover it, and it's
Mm-hmm.
sort of steamed. I sort of do a steam roast,
Yeah, that's okay.
and I find them a lot easier to, they're not hard. There's no hardness at all. But they still have that roasted feeling to them.
Yeah.
They're more completely cooked, I feel, and more delicious. That's just what I do.
Yeah, that sounds nice. I like that. I
Yeah.
roast. I sometimes I do that. Sometimes I just roast, you know.
Okay.
Yeah. You don't have to, yeah, toss it with enough fat, don't overcook them, you know.
Right.
Don't undercook
Okay,
them at
cool.
the same time. Yeah. So other good combos would be
Is this the golden combos now?
yeah, it's just a term that I came. Um Dried fruit and
I
nuts.
never I never heard that term in Ayurveda. Is that something that you
No, it's
created,
not
or?
Ayurveda. It's not Ayurveda. It's
Oh,
not
okay.
Ayurveda. No. Um
All right, golden combo.
yeah. Dried fruit and nuts.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay. I do like dried fruit if it's with nuts. I talked about the raisins, how I don't like it, but if it's with walnuts or something, I enjoy it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
That's a good
nice. Yeah, yeah.
greens with spices.
What kind of spices?
You can do a big mix on that, but you can go simple like cumin and coriander or something. Some, a little bit of mustard seed, but you can create, some really nice combos there of spices.
Okay.
But greens tend to be bitter, and when you add the spices to it, it makes them more palatable. Um, and just a nice combo there.
Yeah,
Like an
they really
Italian,
pop.
yeah, they really pop. In Italian
It's not
cooking,
like just eating boiled kale.
yeah, exactly, exactly. In
Yeah.
Italian cooking,
Right.
they
Garlic
eat a
and,
lot. They eat a lot of greens, like broccoli rabe and escargot, and they always add sweet to that. So it's classic to put like broccoli rabe with pine nuts or something.
okay.
Um, so, but in more in Ayurveda, which comes more from the Indian tradition, the
Hmm.
greens are cooked with spices, and it's really really nice. It cuts down on the bitterness, because a lot of people don't like bitter. But you can really eat a nice portion of greens when they're cooked really nicely with
And
spices.
you're still getting that bitter vegetable, which is going to
Yeah,
be, I mean, they're one of the healthiest vegetables on the planet in terms of
exactly,
purifying, and if you're consuming fat, they're going to be really useful for that.
exactly,
So good in
exactly,
the springtime.
exactly. In fact, can I show you something?
Yeah, sure.
I'm gonna I'm gonna take my computer.
Okay.
Um, let me move out of the background screen. Hold on. Just take me a second.
No, take your time.
Okay, look at what we got for Christmas.
Oh, you're going to show us some new equipment? Oh my goodness. What is that?
That's our hydroponic garden
Oh,
indoors.
that is wonderful. Oh my goodness. How is it doing?
Look at it. It's incredible.
I know, I know.
It's incredible. And it's only been since Christmas.
Have you eaten anything from it yet?
All the time.
And how are they? How are the greens?
Delicious. Delicious. Incredible. Incredible. And they're so
Well,
clean. Like you don't even have to wash really, you know?
okay. Well, hear that, audience? Rich, you live in New York City, Brooklyn, right? So even in urban environments, you can garden.
Yeah. It's a fantastic
You only need a window.
no.
You don't even need a window?
It's a light. It's a light. The
Oh my
light,
goodness.
and it's time. The light comes on at a certain time of the day.
Oh,
it's an amazing
wow. That is
program.
great.
You
Okay.
actually have to subscribe, and it waters itself. The light comes on a timer, shuts off on a timer. Um, I get messages on an app that tells me when I need to add more water.
Are
It's
you
so
using
good.
do you mind me asking the brand? Or
What's
maybe
that?
it doesn't matter. What brand did you purchase?
It's called Garden, Gardyn.
Wow, that's awesome. Wow, awesome.
We
Yeah,
we're
yes.
we are loving it. We are loving it. And then
Oh, that's great. Because a lot of
this
times you
is
purchase gadgets and either you really like them or you're just not that satisfied.
yeah, my wife loves them too. And this is the combo of eating greens plus herbs. So now we're going through them. We'll be
You have
harvesting a
herbs,
lot.
you have herbs in there too?
Yeah. I have two types of basil, thyme, and chives are in there. But a lot of eating greens like tatsoi and bok choy and Swiss chard and kale.
Oh, wow. So it's not
Lots.
just salad greens.
No, no. In fact, that's our next. That's what I'm going to be ordering soon. I'm going to be ordering some salad greens and
Okay.
adding them in. But these are mainly eating greens and herbs.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow. Love it. Thanks for
Anyway,
sharing that. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. So
So
other
anything else
combos, yeah, other
anything else you
combos.
want to share? Golden
Just a few
combo?
more. Other combos that are great is lentils and rice, which is classic. That's kitchery.
You know,
Yogurt.
can I comment on that for a moment?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I don't like kitchery.
Because it's like mush, right?
Yeah, it's just, I love any kind of lentil,
Mm-hmm.
and I will eat, red lentil soup. I will eat, brown lentil soup, French lentil soup, any kind of lentil, any kind of dal. Absolutely love it. And I love basmati rice. I like to mix it with quinoa but mushing them together in a kitchery, it's just never held an appeal for me.
Yeah, I can understand. Whenever I teach it, I always tell
Why would
people,
I ruin a good lentil soup?
yeah, hey, I understand completely. Completely. We're chefs, and whenever I teach it, I always say, look, this might not look like the greatest dish. It comes out to look like mush, but it's nutritious and can be very delicious.
I mean, am I doing something wrong that it's just not
No, you're not.
palatable?
That's how it comes
Okay.
out. That's how
All
it
right.
comes out. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So
So anything, yeah,
another
any other
combo
combos?
that you would not think, but it's very good is yogurt and honey.
Oh,
Yogurt and honey. So, if you have a good digestion, if you have strong digestion, you could have some honey, you can have some yogurt. You don't want to have it at night. You want to have a good quality, of course, but it's a great, that's so great for the gut
the
because
yogurt.
you got probiotic and prebiotic in there,
Right.
you know?
Why honey versus maple syrup or
Well, honey has all the good bacteria,
okay, okay.
you
Yeah, all
know?
right.
Yeah.
Raw honey?
Yeah, good raw honey, good
Yeah,
yogurt with a lot of good
okay.
bacteria in there.
I wanted to just now that you're on yogurt, I never made my own yogurt until recently.
Mm-hmm.
It's because I don't like doing things that are hard. And I thought it was, I thought it, I want easy.
Mm-hmm.
But anybody who has an Instant Pot,
Yeah, that's how I make it
I mean,
too.
it's, basically put the milk into the pot on the stove. I bring it to 180 degrees, use the thermometer,
Yep.
let it cool to between 112 and 115, put it in the Instant Pot with, a little bit of old, yogurt, the starter, like quarter cup or something.
Yep.
And I put it in there for 10 hours. I
Press
push the
that yogurt.
yogurt thing.
Press that yogurt
I
button, right?
I press the yogurt button. I have to open the valve so it doesn't think it's pressure cooking or something. And
Mm-hmm.
that's it. The next morning I have homemade yogurt.
I know. I do the same.
I mean, it
I do it in my
I thought,
Instant Pot also.
and then I asked myself, why haven't I been doing this? I thought it was
Yeah.
hard.
Yep. So delicious, right? That fresh
And
yogurt.
it is so different than buying yogurt at the store.
I know. I know. Completely.
Oh,
Completely. Two different products.
absolutely love it. That's
Two
a
different.
game changer for me right there.
Yeah. Yeah. So the last two really great combos. Milk and spices. It's like milk and turmeric, milk and cumin, milk and ashwagandha, milk and triphala if you want. Are really, really great. So milk does go good with spices. Warm, of course. And
Yeah.
veggies and whole grains. Veggies and whole grains. So
Yeah,
there's a
veggies
lot
and
of, normally when you kind of go over food combining in Ayurveda, there's a lot of no-nos, don't do this, don't do this. But there are a lot of good things that go together as well.
I think that's really helpful because, thinking about, well, what goes well together, because focus on that and then you don't have to worry about the no-nos.
Right,
So
right.
awesome. Well, I think that's good for today, Rich.
Yeah,
Next week I mean, not next week, but the week after we'll resume. And yeah, so awesome.
yeah, we got
We'll
down to the
continue with a Ayurveda and Ayurvedic approach to food with Chef Rich LaMarita.
fantastic. Got down to some good detail today. Thank you so much.